to book chat. Let me get Instagram on here. Okay, welcome Instagram. Let's see how we're doing here. Looks like we're live. Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Hope you're having a good day. I'm on here a little bit late tonight. Gotta get my tea going here. Had some technical difficulties with my Wi-Fi as usual. So anyway, just wanted to say that. So welcome in tonight. We are doing some reading in Agatha Christie's book, Sleeping Murder, which is a classic among her books. I just got in a bunch of Agatha Christie to sell and read, some reading copies for you people that like Agatha Christie. Let's see what's going on. I guess we've got a lot. We've got sales in both of the stores, the eBay stores, the Estate Find store, and the regular bookstore. The Estate Find store is non-book related items, although there are some paperbacks and different things in there that are not really rare, but things that people like to buy in books. So I do have like paperbacks and some Bibles and just different things in there in the Estate Find store. The bookstore is more of the rare type items that are book related or books. We have some bookmarks and different things in there. So feel free to browse around in there. I'm going to put the links in the comments here so you guys can find them. And put both links in, and then I'll also put the Whatnot link in. So the whatnot.com, I just wanted to explain to you guys, since you've seen probably some of my links up for when I go live. So tomorrow at 6 o'clock, I will be on whatnot.com live as rarity estate finds there, because it's kind of encompassing all of the things that I do there. So, and it's always a fun time. We go over all kinds of books. We go through the basement of their library and pick out different things that people want to buy. It's $5 for hardbacks and $2 or $3 for the soft covers or paperbacks. And we try to have fun with it, and just, I spend about 3 hours every Tuesday and Thursday nights with that. And so I'll put the link up for but it's always a good time, and people come and just visit or whatever. I mean, it's not like it's a real high stress, like auction type thing. I usually do bundles with people, which just means that they pick out what they want and start a pile, so to speak, and just buy it on the buy it now part of it. So it's not all like an auction type thing, but it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of community amongst book people, book nerds, so you might find people that you like over there, besides me even, but it's always a fun time. So check it out. Just put the Whatnot link up there. Doesn't cost a thing to sign up, to buy on there. And and there's lots of really good deals on there. So I don't usually sell a lot of the higher dollar items on Whatnot just because um, I usually use like the biblio.com or um, eBay for that type of thing, just so that you guys can. But I do show willing to show something. Like if someone wants to see a certain thing, I'm always willing to do that. But usually the most of the things that I sell on there are, um, you know, probably items that are less than $20 a piece. So, and most of them are like $5 hardbacks or paperbacks or whatever. I do sell some stuff for the library that is weeded out items, and a lot of times they're not even like hardly used. So weeding them out because people, whatever reason in our area have not read them. Now that doesn't mean that they're junky books. It just means that our area has not, people haven't read that for a couple years in our area. So that's kind of how we do it at our public library. So I work with them. I also work with a lot of not a lot, but some private estates. I don't do a ton of private estates, but simply because I have such limited time. But so anyway, so welcome to my new office. This is my new space. Really am enjoying it, and I work here quite a bit, so it's a good thing I enjoy being here. For you guys on Instagram, this is my new office space. I'll take you for a tour when I get my Wi-Fi a little better. It's just so spotty right now that I have a hard time walking around and showing people anything. Um, so hopefully we will be able to do that pretty soon. Um, so I guess tonight I just wanted to talk a little bit about what has been going on here. And many of you know that my daughter got married in May, and we had a wonderful time, and she's picked out just a wonderful person to be married to. And so we are very happy about that. And so before that, my mom was sick, and just like there's just been everything this spring. Then we had to move the library books, which we are still involved with and still keep going on that. And now I am moved into my new office, but I'm still trying to move books over from the library to this location because they have to redo the space that I'm in. And so it's just taken large amounts of time. So I haven't been able to really have fun and go look for things for you guys as much as I'd like to. But I did run across one thing I wanted to tell you about. I did get to go to an estate sale this last weekend, and I found just a boatload of Louis L'Amour books, which are, he's a very famous author, really prolific. And kind of an old author too. Like I was reading that one of his books was turned into a John Wayne movie back in 1953. Like really, pretty old compared to uh, not the kind that I usually deal with, like Dickens and but older. And so I got about 45. I think there's 45 books of his, and so there's a listing for that. I just wanted to let you know it's just a big lot of the different Louis L'Amour books. And so if you don't know who that is, he's like an author that wrote about all kinds of Western fiction stories and things about the Old West and that kind of thing. So anyway, so I just thought I'd throw that out there. There's a listing. And I have not posted it yet, but I probably will post it pretty soon. I just haven't had a chance to do that. But I will start listing a few more. I've got some really cool books. I've got a real nice copy of Gone with the Wind that's very, very early and worth some money. So I don't have that on yet, but I'll be working on that soon. So, and then coming up is a copy of Wuthering Heights and a real nice copy of Pride and Prejudice, which you're if you are looking for that they're really, really nice copies. Could even be a great Christmas present, um, so or birthday or whatever, really. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. So I'll go ahead and start with where we left off um, with Sleeping Murder. And we are at a point where Gwenda is talking to figure out what happened to her dad and everything. And so I'll start with that. Giles and Gwenda sat together at a corner table at the Ginger Cat. The little black notebook lay on the table between them. Miss Marple came in from the street and joined them. What will you have, Miss Marple? Coffee? Yes, thank you. No, not cakes. Just a scone and butter. Giles gave the order, and Gwenda pushed the little black book across to Miss Marple. First you must read this, she said, and then we can talk. It's what he wrote himself when he was at the nursing home. Oh, but first of all, just tell Miss Marple exactly what Dr. Penrose said, Giles. Giles did so, and Miss Marple opened the little black book, and the waitress brought 3 cups of weak coffee and a scone and butter, and a plate of cakes. Giles and Gwenda did not talk. They watched Miss Marple as she read. Finally, she closed the book and laid it down. Her expression was difficult to read. There was, Gwenda thought, anger in it. Her lips were pressed tightly together, and her eyes shone very brightly. Unusually so, considering her age. Yes, indeed, she said. Yes, indeed. Gwenda said, You advised us once, do you remember, not to go on. I can see why you did, but we did go on, and this is where we've gotten to. Only now it seems as though we got to another place where one could, if one liked, stop. Do you think we ought to stop or not? Miss Marple shook her head slowly. She seemed worried, perplexed. I don't know, she said. I really don't know. It might be better to do so. Much better to do so, because after this lapse of time, there is nothing you can do. Nothing, I mean, of a constructive nature. You mean that after this lapse of time, there is nothing we can find out? Asked Giles. Miss Marple, I didn't mean that at all. 19 years is not such a long time. There are people who would remember things, who could answer questions. Quite a lot of people. Servants, for instance, there must have been at least 2 servants in the house at the time, and a nurse, probably a gardener. It will only take time and a little trouble to find and talk to these people. As a matter of fact, I've found one of them already, the cook. No, it wasn't that. It was more the question of what practical good can you accomplish? And I'd be inclined to say that none, and yet, she stopped. There is a yet. I'm a little slow in thinking things out, but I have a feeling that there is something perhaps not very tangible, that would be worth taking risks for, and even that one should take risks for. But I find it difficult to say just what that is. Giles began, It seems to me, and stopped. Miss Marple turned to him gratefully. Gentlemen, she said, always seem to be able to tabulate things so clearly. I'm sure you have thought things out. I have been thinking things out, said Giles, and it seems to me that there are just 2 conclusions one can come to. One is the same as I suggested before. Helen Halliday wasn't dead when Gwenny saw her lying in the hall. She came to and went away with her lover, whoever he was. That would still fit the facts as we know them. It would square with Kevin Halliday's rooted belief that he killed his wife, and it would square with the missing suitcase and clothes with the note that Dr. Kennedy found. But it leaves certain points unaccounted for. It doesn't explain why Kelvin was convinced he strangled his wife in the bedroom, and it doesn't cover the one, to my mind, really staggering question: where is Helen Halliday now? Because it seems to me against all reason that Helen should never have been heard of or from again. Grant that the two letters she wrote are genuine. What happened after that? Why did she never write again? She was on affectionate terms with her brother. He's obviously deeply attached to her and always has been. He might disapprove of her conduct, that he expected never to hear from her again. And if you ask me, that point has obviously been worrying Kennedy himself. Let's say he accepted at the time absolutely the story he's told us, his sister's going off and Kelvin's breakdown, but he didn't expect never to hear from his sister again. I think as the years went on and he didn't hear, and Kelvin Halliday persisted in his delusion and finally committed suicide, that a terrible doubt began to creep up in his mind. Supposing that Kelvin's story was true, that he actually had killed Helen. There's no word from her, and surely if she had died somewhere abroad, word would have come to him. I think that explains his eagerness when he saw our advertisement. He hoped that it might lead to some account of where she was or what she had been doing. I'm sure it's absolutely unnatural for someone to disappear as completely as Helen seems to have done. That in itself is highly suspicious. I agree with you, said Miss Marple, but the alternative, Mr. Reed, Giles said slowly. I've been thinking about the alternative. It's pretty fantastic, you know, even rather frightening, because it involves, how can I put it, a kind of malevolence. Yes, said Gwenda, malevolence is just right. Even, I think, something that isn't quite sane. She shivered. That is indicated, I think, said Miss Marple. You know, there's a great deal of, well, queerness about, more than people imagine. Some of it. Her face was thoughtful. There can't be, you see, any normal explanation, said Giles. I'm taking the fantastic hypothesis that Kelvin Halliday didn't kill his wife, but generally thought he had done so. That's what Miss Dr. Penrose, who seems a decent sort of bloke, obviously wants to think. His first impression of Halliday was that here was a man who had killed his wife and wanted to give himself up to the police. He had to take Kennedy's word for it that that wasn't so, so he had perforce to believe that Halliday was a victim of a complex or a fixation or whatever the jargon is, but he didn't really like that solution. He'd had a good experience of the type, and Halliday didn't square with it. However, on knowing Halliday better, he came quite genuinely sure that Halliday was not the type of man who would strangle a woman under any provocation. So he accepted the fixations theory, but with misgivings. And that really means that only one theory will fit the case. Halliday was induced to believe that he had killed his wife by someone else. In other words, we've come to X. Going over the facts very carefully, I'd say that hypothesis is at least possible. According to his own account, Halliday that evening went into the dining room and took a drink as he usually did, then went into the next room, saw a note on the desk, and had a blackout. Giles paused, and Miss Marple nodded her head in approval. He went on. Say it wasn't a blackout. That it was just simply dope, knockout drops in the whiskey. The next step is quite clear, isn't it? X had strangled Helen in the hall, but afterward he took her upstairs and as a crime passionnel on the bed, and that's where Kelvin is when he comes to, and the poor devil who may have been suffering from jealousy where she's been concerned thinks he's done it. What does he do next? Goes off to find his brother-in-law in on the other side of the town and on foot, and that gives X time to do his next trick. Pack and remove a suitcase of clothes and also remove the body. Though what he did with the body, Giles ended vexedly, beats me completely. It surprises me that you should say that, Miss Marple. I should say that problem would present few difficulties, but do please go on. Who were the men in her life? Quoted Giles. I saw that in a newspaper, as we came back in the train. It set me wondering because really that's really the crux of the matter is that if there is an X, as we believe, all we know about him is that he must have been crazy about her, literally crazy about her. And so he hated my father, said Gwenda, and he wanted him to suffer. So that's where we came up against it, said Giles. We know what kind of a girl Helen was. He hesitated. Man, supplied Gwenda. Miss Marple looked up suddenly through to speak and then stopped. And that she was beautiful, but we've no clue were there were in her life besides her husband. There may have been any number. Miss Marple shook her head. Hardly that. She was quite young, but you are not quite accurate, Mr. Reed. We do something about what you have termed the men in her life. There was the man she was going out to marry. Ah, yes, the lawyer chap. That was his name. What was his name? Walter Fane, said Miss Marple. Yes, but you can't count him. He was out in Malaya or India or somewhere. But was he? He didn't remain a tea planter, Miss Marple pointed out. He came back here and went into the firm, and is now the senior partner. Gwenda exclaimed, "Perhaps he followed her back here? He may have done. We don't know." Giles was looking curiously at the old lady. "How did you find all this out?" Miss Marple smiled apologetically. "I've been gossiping a little in shops and waiting for buses. Old ladies are supposed to be inquisitive. Yes, one can pick up quite a lot of news." "Walter Fane," said Giles thoughtfully. Helen turned him down. "That may have rankled quite a lot. Did he ever marry?" "No," said Miss Marple. "He lives with his mother. I'm going to tea there at the end of the week." "There's someone else we know about, too," said Gwenda suddenly. "You remember there was somebody she got engaged to or entangled with when she left school, someone undesirable." Dr. Kennedy said, "I wonder just why he was undesirable." "That's two men," said Giles. "Either of them may have had a grudge, may have brooded. Perhaps the first young man may have had some unsatisfactory mental history. Dr. Kennedy could tell us that, said Gwenda, only it's going to be a little difficult asking him. I mean, it's all very well for me to go along and ask for news of my stepmother, whom I barely remember, but it's going to take a bit of explaining if I want to know about her early love affairs. It seems rather excessive interest in a stepmother you hardly knew. There are probably other ways of finding out, said Miss Marple. Ah, yes, I think with time and patience we can gather the information we want. Anyway, we've got two possibilities, said Giles. We might, I think, infer a third, and said Miss Marple, it would be, of course, a pure hypothesis, but justified, I think, by the turn of events. Gwenda and Giles looked at her in slight surprise. It's just an inference, said Miss Marple, turning a little pink. Helen Kennedy went out to India to marry young Fane. Admittedly, she was not wildly in love with him, but she must have been fond of him and quite prepared to spend her life with him. Yet as soon as she gets there, she breaks off the engagement and wires her brother to send her money to get home. Now why? Changed her mind, I suppose, said Giles. Both Miss Marple and Gwenda looked at him in mild contempt. Of course she changed her mind, said Gwenda. We know that. What Miss Marple means, I suppose girls do change their minds, said Giles vaguely. Under certain circumstances, said Miss Marple. Her words held all the pointed innuendo that elderly ladies are able to achieve, with the minimum of actual statement. Something he did, Giles was suggesting vaguely when Gwenda chipped in sharply. Of course, she said, another man. She and Miss Marple looked at each other with the assurance of those admitted to a Freemasonry from which men were excluded. Gwenda added with certainty, on the boat going out, propin, propin, propinquity. Propinquity? I don't know what that is, said Miss Marple. Moonlight on the boat deck, said Gwenda, all that sort of thing. Only it must have been serious, not just a flirtation. Yes, said Miss Marple. I think it was serious. If so, why didn't she marry the chap? Demanded Giles. Perhaps he didn't really care for her, Gwenda said slowly, then shook her head. No, I think in that case she would still have married Walter Fane. Oh, of course, I'm being stupid, married man. She looked triumphantly at Miss Marple. Exactly, said Miss Marple. That's how I should reconstruct it. They fell in love, probably desperately in love. He was a married man with children, perhaps, and probably an honorable type. Well, that would be the end of it. Only she couldn't go on and marry Walter Fane, said Gwenda, so she wired her brother and went home. Yes, that all fits. And the boat home. And on she met my father. She paused, thinking about it. Not wildly in love, she said, but attracted. And then there was me. They were both unhappy, and they consoled each other. My father told, and perhaps she told him about the other man. Yes, of course. She flicked over the pages of the diary. I know there was someone, she said as much to me on the boat, someone she loved and couldn't marry. Yes, that's it. Helen and my father felt like they were alike, and there was me to be looked after, and she thought she could make him happy. And she even thought perhaps that she'd be quite happy herself in the end. She stopped, nodded violently at Miss Marple, and said brightly, That's it. Giles was looking exasperated. Really, Gwenda, you make a whole lot of things up and pretend that they actually happened. They did happen. They must have happened. And that gives us a third person for X. You mean the married man? We don't know what he was like. He mayn't have been nice at all. He may have been a little mad. He may have followed her there. You just placed him as going out to India. Well, people can come back from India, can't they? Walter Fane did. It was nearly a year later. I don't say this man did come back, but I say he's a possibility. You keep harping on who the men were in her life. Well, we've got three of them, Walter Fane and some young man and a married man whom we don't know exists, finished Giles. We'll find out, said Gwenda, won't we, Miss Marple? With time and patience, said Miss Marple, we may find out a great deal. Now for my contribution. As a result of a very fortunate little conversation in the Drapers today, I have discovered that Edith Paget, who was cook at St. Catherine's at the time we are interested in, is still in Dilmouth. Her sister is married to a confectioner here. I think it would be quite natural, Gwenda, for you to want to see her. She may be able to tell us a good deal. That's wonderful, said Gwenda. I've thought of something else, she added. I'm going to make a new will. Don't look so grave, Giles. I shall still leave my money to you, but I shall get Walter Fane to do it for me. Gwenda, said Giles, do be careful. Making a will, said Gwenda, is a normal thing to do, and the line of approach I've thought up is quite good. I want to see him. I want to see what he's like, and if I think that possibly. She left the sentence unfinished. What surprises me, said Giles, is that no one else answered the advertisement of ours, this Edith Paget, for example. Miss Marple shook her head. People take a long time to make up their minds about a thing like that in these country districts, she said. They're suspicious. They like to think things over. And that is where we end tonight. So I'd like to thank you guys and dropping out and whatever and dealing with all of my weird internet connections tonight. I'm so sorry. I'm hoping to have this dealt with by the end of this week with our Wi-Fi issues and everything. So thank you for joining me. Take advantage of the links in the comments. And come join us tomorrow night at Whatnot. We have a good time. It's whatnot.com. It's an app that you can download on your phone. It's free to join and make an account. And just come hang out with us. We're Rarity Estate Finds on the whatnot.com app if you decide to do that. Otherwise, we still have our eBay stores, and the links are in the comments. So I hope you enjoyed tonight's reading. It's starting to get good, isn't it? I really love this book. So we will see you next Monday, hopefully at more closer to 7:30. And we'll hopefully be getting it together by then. So have a great week, and I will see you Monday.